Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
But there are also policy decisions that we should be expecting our leaders to make to deal with white supremacy. The United States Congress just a few weeks ago, by a vote of 51 to 42, approved a judge for the Federal Appellate Court of Appeals who ran a right-wing blog and regularly linked to birther articles and articles from white nationalist websites. I mean, Congress knew this. They're supposed to be looking at these judicial nominees and making sure that these judicial nominees are in the mainstream and are not extremists. The grant that Christian just talked about, the cabinet of the president and the coterie surrounding him, Sebastian Gorka and others, this is Congress's job to vigorously look during the confirmation process at each and every one of these individuals and to make sure that they don't have these kinds of connections. And finally, here's the tough part. Congress has to deal with, and state legislatures have to deal with, the reality of white supremacy in their own policies. Sebastian Gorka said 2 weeks ago that there is no real white supremacy. White supremacy is individuals denying the civil rights of others. Well, we've had two federal judges just in the last year, two federal courts in the last year, identify two state legislatures, Texas and North Carolina, that those federal courts said deliberately created voter ID laws for the purpose of discriminating against African American and Latino voters. When we see that, when we see state legislatures convening to pass voter suppression laws, that is white supremacy. That is an effort to try and deny the civil rights of African Americans and Latinos. So if this is a moment for honesty, if this is a moment where America is prepared to confront itself, it has to confront the reality of violent white extremists who are out and who are broken and who are marching in the streets. But we also have to recognize the role that we play and that elected leaders play in setting policies that further white supremacism for the purpose of their own political gain. And my hope is that Congress and that governors and that state legislatures will be prepared in this moment to take on the responsibility themselves of demonstrating that they want no traffic with white supremacy.
She's right, and this is what I kept asking people. What is the policy? What is the policy if the president isn't racist and the people that are in his cabinet who promote racist ideology aren't racist? And Breitbart isn't a racist magazine, and birtherism was just, something he did. I don't know, it fascinated him or whatever. And that, Judge Curiel was, just an aberration and all that. Then where are the Republicans? Where are they? Why didn't they speak out last week? How come they didn't take to the TV? How come they didn't take to the Twitter? How come they weren't denouncing him by name? You did have 15 members of the GOP, like the Lindsey Grahams and the John McCains and the Bob Corkers came out. A couple people came out and said, we're starting to question the president's competency, which is the issue of our time. Is the president's competency, is his stability, his ability to be the president. The very job itself requires more of a man than we have right now. And everybody knows it. The polls are out. The polls are terrible in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these places that gave him the extra 43 electoral votes that he needed to become the president of the United States. These people are saying he's vile, that they don't approve of him, that, they're sorry they voted for him, that, they disapprove, they think he's embarrassing, all these things. I could read you the poll numbers. I mean, it's starting to occur. However, it's not the end of white supremacist institutionalized racism. This is what younger people probably don't understand. And, that was an eye-opener last week, figuring out that people who are just a couple of years younger than me don't remember, what gerrymandering is to break up the black vote. They don't remember voter suppression efforts. They don't remember that the courts in North Carolina said that voter ID laws were specifically designed to suppress African Americans from voting, specifically designed to suppress the vote from people who live in cities where there's mass transportation and don't have driver's licenses, which tend to be people of color. I mean, this mass incarceration, these crazy different sentences, sentencing guidelines for the same cocaine, but the form of it means, you go to jail for 25 years. Oh, you had, the same amount, but it was in powder form. Oh, go, call your mother, tell her to come bail bail you out. Do you know what I mean? And then think about what mass incarceration accomplishes. When you incarcerate 3 million people in America, all those 3 million people cannot vote when they come out of jail. Okay? They have no say in the society in which they're asked to straighten up and fly right. I mean, the whole thing is a racist plot. The whole thing is designed to keep people who have, made a mistake in their lives one time or were exorbitantly sentenced for the same crime that people who in my neighborhood got a slap on the wrist for. These people were declared felons and put in prison. I can vote. They can't. I've been arrested. I can vote. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. It's just a ridiculous thing to close your eyes to all this and to know that Trump is feeding that beast and wanting to go back to a time, when, and insert your own humiliation there. Insert your own memory of somebody being humiliated if it wasn't you. I mean, why can't we just move freaking forward? The Republicans are quiet because the Republicans think that this is beneficial to them. Period. End of story. That question was asked to every Republican who had the nerve to appear on the TV on the Sunday shows. And none of them would admit that this is something that they benefit from and that they some of them, blow a dog whistle. Others of them are just standing on school property saying, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Some of them are overt and in your face, and others of them are cowards. So, of course, the right-wing lunatics, you know what they bring up to me as an example of how the Democrats are the racist people in this country? They go back to 1940 and Senator Bob Byrd, who's dead now and has been dead for 16 years. And how Hillary said that Bob Byrd was an example for her to follow because he denounced the Klan. I mean, these people have no grip on history. Not that I was a big fan of Robert Byrd, okay? Not a big fan. He was the last of the Democratic racists of the South. People don't understand that when the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 5, how many years ago is that already? 64, 74, 84, 94, 2004, 2014. 50 years ago, the parties flipped. Racist Democrats became racist Republicans. What don't they understand about their own modern history?
I know a lot of those members of Congress, and they don't think like that. They don't think the way the white supremacists or the KKK think. However, Chuck, if they're silent, they wear the cap of intentionally or unintentionally. They wear the cap saying we agree with that, and thank God for Ben Sass and Rand Paul and John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Those members that's come out to say we totally disagree with that. That's not who we are. That's not the country that we live in, and it's not the party that we want to represent.
That's J.C. Watts, a Republican congressman from Oklahoma, who sat on the board of Clear Channel the whole time I was there, just about, and allowed all this racist talk to go out over those airwaves for years. Now, all of a sudden, he's like, there are a lot of Republicans who don't feel that way. Well, where are they? Why don't they say something? I want to show you something that's interesting to me. Kasich, who's a decent guy as far as he's not a bomb thrower. He seems rational. He loves his family, right? He's more moderate than the bomb throwers, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Gorka. He's not that overt, okay? But when asked about this racist crap, he immediately, because it's so ingrained in their philosophy, the Republicans, for 50 some odd years, because it's part of their platform, because it has been for 52 years, to be dividers, he actually started talking about racism, and I mean, like a half a second didn't go by before he started talking about welfare. Now, before I play this, I just want to give you a little factoid. Most people on welfare are white. Okay, then.
You called the president's response to the violence in Charlottesville, quote, pathetic. Mitt Romney says that he thinks President Trump needs to actually apologize to the nation, acknowledge he was wrong in order to avoid, quote, an unraveling of our national fabric. Do you agree? Do you think President Trump needs to apologize?
I think, Jake, in some ways, we're looking backwards, okay? Where I want to look now is what are we going to do to deal with the fundamental issues that we have in the country, the issue of race, the issue of police and community coming together and developing policing methods that can unify. We've done it in Ohio. The need to reform a welfare system.
What?
So instead of just having people do make work, and a lot of people don't know this, if you're on welfare and you get cash assistance right now, you have to work 30 hours a week. People don't know that. If you don't work, we take you off of welfare. The point is that effort, that time you have to put in to be responsible needs to be meaningful. We got to get people to job training so they're not stuck in poverty for generations. We need to think about what we can do to make sure minorities have a piece of the pie, what we have to do in our country to make sure that we begin to discuss the difference between the wealthiest and the poorest in our country. All these things, if we can have a dialogue on that, that is what's going to bring people together. And people who have very different points of view, if they have goodwill, it's amazing how much we can agree upon.
Yeah, no, that's a sad thing. That's where his mind went immediately. This isn't about poverty. This is about hatred. This is about voter suppression. This is about gerrymandering. This is about mass incarceration. This is about a new Jim Crow. This is about just skinning the cat with a different set of, knives. And this is what he thinks of? I mean, that's sad. And the thing about Kasich is you get the feeling that you could talk to him and you could explain to him where he went off the rails there while trying to seem rather, level-headed about Trump's racists all around him and Trump's racism personally. But no, this is about putting judges on the bench who are racists. This is about, putting people in the cabinet who are devout racists. This is about staying silent as a GOP. This is about not wanting to comment on it. Oh, I just want to move forward. We all want to move forward, but you can't move forward until you denounce what's holding us back. And it ain't welfare. Okay? That's not the problem. The problem is institutionalized racism that's been devised, designed, and implemented by the grand old party. And that's why the party is falling apart. Their house is divided, whether to go full racist or just dog whistle racism. And a house divided cannot stand. If you want to be the party of Lincoln, you ought to know that. This is unbelievable to me. I mean, even the well-meaning people are so indoctrinated in the GOP. They can't think straight.
RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.